Good afternoon and welcome to the News Roundup for Tuesday, October 14, 2025. I'm Bill Thomas, and here's what's happening right now. Redrawing the lines, former President Obama joining the fight for Congress by urging voters to pass a controversial redistricting effort in California. Escape from New York, the Republican candidate for mayor warning that mismanagement by Democrats is rapidly turning the Big Apple into a dystopian nightmare and skating on thin ice. The ceasefire in Gaza holding for now as a number of unresolved issues threaten to shatter the fragile Middle East peace deal brokered by President Donald Trump. Also, why some Americans are now crowdfunding their groceries, and a popular potato chip company says they're rebranding their product. Apparently, a whole bunch of people didn't even know what their chips were made out of. All this and a bunch more coming up right now on the Big Roundup. We have so much to get to today, and we begin with this. Former President Barack Obama, he's now partnering up with California Governor Gavin Newsom by trying to convince voters in the Golden State to approve a ballot proposal which could add as many as 5 Democratic seats to the U.S. Congress. Obama agreeing to appear in a 30-second video ad in support of a measure called Proposition 50, which would drastically reshape California's voting districts in favor of the Democrats. The proposal aims to counter a number of similar moves which have already been made by the GOP in Texas and elsewhere. They were prompted by President Trump and designed to help Republicans win more seats in next year's midterm elections. Now, in the ad, Obama claims that Republicans are trying to steal enough seats in Congress so they can rig that election and wield unchecked power for another couple of seasons. Goes on to tell the audience that they can actually make a difference by heading to the polls, voting in favor of Proposition 50, and stopping Republicans right in their tracks. Newsom is urging voters to back his measure while also framing the election as a referendum on the policies of President Trump. You know those policies like border protection, making cities clean and safe, and bringing wars to an end? Yeah, those tragic policies. Meanwhile, the GOP argues that Newsom's gimmick is simply a power grab by the Democrats, which completely ignores California's current district lines. They also point out that those congressional divisions were created years ago by a voter-approved independent commission. Now, voting is already underway on the measure, and it concludes just a few weeks from now on November 4th. And final thought, this is the News Roundup Lowdown. You know, I'm not exactly a huge fan of Barack Obama, but he got this one right. And for that, he gets a big News Roundup pat on the back, a firm handshake, and a sincere thanks a million, Chief. The part he got right was when he said you can stop Republicans in their tracks. And he's correct. You can absolutely stop them. And the way to do that is by supporting California's redistricting scam. And that's what it is. It's a scam. Now, this hustle has nothing to do with improving California or serving its population. Rather, it's just a goofy trick to rig the vote and squeeze more Democrats into the House. And the goal is to hamstring the Trump administration. The party got wrong? Republicans. They have no interest in stealing anything. And he's just made it abundantly clear that it's the Democrats in California who are practicing what I call thievery. Unchecked power is what his party is hungering and thirsting for. And he's been plenty clear. Stop Republicans in their tracks. Look, here's the deal. From San Francisco to San Diego and a whole bunch of places in between, large chunks of California, they're filthy, crime-riddled, drug-laden, polluted, unsafe, overcrowded, unaffordable, and just downright dangerous. Now, I'm not going to call the state dystopian because that might alarm certain people, but it is dystopian. I just won't say it is, but it is. Therefore, Obama, he's doing the right thing when he backs that state's architect, the Honorable Governor Gavin Newsom, and his grand redistricting con. You got to do what you got to do, rig the game, fix the vote, and try to do for the country in Washington what they've had tremendous success doing in the Golden State. And with that, drop us a note with your thoughts and comments. And we're at newsroundupwithbill@gmail.com. And spying on your comments is that guy over there, producer Davey Ross. And who's up first, Davey Cakes?
Okay, Bill, we have one from Shirley in Tucson, Arizona.
Shirley, it must be Shirley. And Shirley, what's on your mind?
She says, isn't Obama retired? If not, he should be. Backing gruesome Newsom's power grab is a bad look, but something we've come to expect from the increasingly desperate Dems.
Yeah, I think Barack Obama's kind of trying to keep himself relevant in the national picture. This is a California caper. Barack Obama should keep his mouth shut. He's a retired president. He should have other things to do. Go work on the library. Do something productive. Don't try to prop up Gavin Newsom. He's going to try to take the party down in a couple of seasons when he runs for president. I appreciate you checking in. And Davey, who's up next?
Okay, Bill, here's one from Lloyd in Princeton, New Jersey.
Hiya, Lloyd.
Lloyd says the Republicans started this whole redistricting nonsense because they can't win a fair election. And finally, the Democrats are showing some backbone by fighting fire with fire.
Well, regardless of what the Democrats did and what the Republicans did, if you're saying the Republicans did it first, so all we're going to do is strike back, that means you lack any semblance of creativity. So if you're calling the Republicans bad guys, you're going to counter them by being bad guys yourself. That's kind of like two wrongs don't make a right. Something we all learned when we were about 4, maybe 5 years old. Good job, Governor Newsom. By the way, take a minute and do some research regarding California and make sure your research is done in the safety of your own home, because far too much of that state, it's unsafe to walk through, drive through, do business, or raise a family in. Also, keep in mind that the governor of that state, the one who's behind this whole redistricting con job, this is the guy who has designs on being the next president of the United States of America. That's a job he's going to push for, a job he cannot win. And Barack Obama, he's going to be eating crow at the end of the day when his guy loses. Switch things up just a bit and pivot now to a dire warning about another critical election, which is now cranking into high gear, and it's just a few short weeks away. The Republican candidate to become the next mayor of New York City saying that right now the policies of Democratic leaders are on the verge of turning daily life in the Big Apple into a scene straight out of a scary movie. The guy who wants to be mayor, Curtis Sliwa, says that high taxes, skyrocketing crime rates, and utter mismanagement by the Democrats are now combining to make his city, well, it kind of seemed exactly as it appeared to be in the horror film Escape from New York. I remember that one all those years ago. Kurt Russell and all the other big stars. In case you're not aware, in that movie classic from the 1980s, Manhattan is portrayed as a crime-infested maximum security prison. Sliwa claims that, unfortunately, nothing seems to have changed much since then. And we may be now staring at a sequel, and locals might be starring in that sequel. He says that due to a whole bunch of failed progressive policies, decent folks like you and I leaving the city in droves and taking their money with them, and therefore devastating the local economy. Goes on to say that a good quality of life just not possible without safety. That right now people are scared to ride the city's underground subway, which they affectionately refer to as Fear City, and that in order to fix things, to patch things up, New York needs to add about 7,000 new cops to the beat. And so Sliwa is a die-hard Republican who supports low taxes, small business, and cutting out wasteful expenditures. He was born in New York City. He's a local boy. Founded a volunteer crime prevention group called the Guardian Angels way back in 1979. I followed this guy for a long time. He is New York. Now, according to the latest polls right now, he's trailing both the Democratic candidate Zoran Mamdani and independent Andrew Cuomo, and by, unfortunately, significant margins. In the meantime, Mamdani heads down the stretch with a wide lead, and the self-described Democratic Socialist brags that he's now heading a movement which has won the battle for the soul of the entire Democratic Party. And that is just downright frightening. Final thought, and this is the News Roundup Lowdown. Unfortunately, not a great deal of time for me to comment on this story, as I've been very busy today helping the Sliwa campaign staff prepare his concession speech to future New York City Mayor Zoran Mamdani. I've got writer's cramp. I was writing so much today. I'm actually a fan of Curtis Sliwa, and he's the prime choice for the mayor's office, but he can't compete with a guy who's going to give you everything in exchange for your vote. Officially, I think they call that squid pro quo. But look, if someone else is footing the bill, yes.
Bill, it's not squid pro quo. It's quid pro quo.
Oh, it's pretty close. Pretty close. In any event, if someone else is footing the bill, I'm all in. Quid pro quo, squid pro quo, all the same to me. Hey, a little comparison contrast here. Mayor Mamdani will give you free bus rides all over town. He'll kick into high gear city-owned grocery stores. He'll freeze the rent. You got to love that. No-cost childcare, and he'll tax all the evil rich guys. Mayor Sliwa, on the other hand, he would cut wasteful spending, tend to fiscal responsibility. Grown-ups, they like that. Address rampant crime by putting more cops on the beat and locking up bad guys instead of locking up aspirin and cosmetics at the convenience stores. Look, Sliwa is the better candidate. He's a real New Yorker, and he is the best man for the job, but he's trying to earn New York's vote. The other guy, he's simply trying to buy it. The way I see it, game, set, match. Spoiler alert, it's over. Mamdani wins. And what do you think of the big race for mayor of New York? Tell us what you're thinking. We're at newsroundupwithbill@gmail.com. And Davey, who's up first?
Okay, Bill, here's Bart in Cape Cod, Massachusetts.
Hi, Bart at Cape Cod. What are you thinking?
He says, Sliwa is right. New York City is a complete disgrace, and if Mamdani wins, all hope of saving it will go down the drain.
Yeah, as bad as it is, it's only going to get worse. I appreciate you checking in. I've been to New York once, and once was enough. Davey, who's up next?
Okay, Bill, here's one from Penny in Scarsdale, New York.
Penny, for your thoughts. Penny, what are you thinking?
She says, there's a reason this guy is currently in third place. He has no grip on reality.
He has a firm grip on reality, and he is New York. He's had New York's back since 1979 when he founded the Guardian Angels. He is a real guy, a good guy, and the real deal. Now, look, New York City, it's out of control. You got the sky-high taxes, huge homeless population, rampant crime, dangerous subways, which he's been trying to fix since the 1970s. Nothing is affordable. People want change. All Mamdani is offering is free government services, and that's going to solve absolutely nothing. New York, I'm telling you this for your own benefit. You gotta wake up, man. All right, change things up just a bit now. Turn our attention to some breaking developments from the Middle East, where right now the fragile ceasefire agreement between Israel and Hamas, it is holding firm for at least the time being. However, a whole bunch of pressing issues remain unresolved, and they're putting extreme pressure on President Trump's ambitious plan to bring long-term peace to that entire region. In Israel, a number of families still waiting anxiously for Hamas to return the remains of a number of dead hostages. A group representing those families now calling for the ceasefire to be completely suspended until the terror group upholds their end of the bargain, which may prove difficult because the location of some of those remains right now currently unknown. On the other hand, several aid organizations point out that the president's plan calls for full humanitarian aid to begin flowing immediately into Gaza. They say those efforts are simply not happening fast enough, and they are calling for Israel to open up all available border crossings immediately. However, Israeli authorities now say that moving forward, the number of those aid shipments will be greatly reduced until all of their deceased hostages are on their way home as promised. Now, as a result, both sides are accusing the other of violating some of the most fundamental terms of the agreement, and they're threatening to put the deal on ice until all of those issues have been resolved. Now, for his part, President Trump saying that we're now entering what he calls phase 2 of the agreement. He also says the job is far from done, that all of the dead hostages need to be returned, and that if Hamas refuses to disarm, the group of countries which are behind this peace deal, they will disarm Hamas for them. They'll do the job. Final thought, and this is the News Roundup Lowdown. You know, the entire world watched history being made yesterday as Hamas's war with Israel came to an end after 2 extremely long and brutally torturous years. Now, officially, the war is over, and on day 2, the ceasefire, it's holding, but everyone is watching and very carefully to ensure that both sides live up to the deal and long-term peace is, in fact, restored to the region. Of high concern to everyone getting necessary aid to all of Gaza. That means food, water, medicine, critical supplies, temporary shelter, and a bunch more. And while that process is coming along, yeah, in some areas it's taking a bit too long. Additionally, and critical to the ceasefire, is Hamas doing all they can to return the remains of the Israeli hostages. If this critical part of the agreement is not adhered to, Israel could reference that as a deal breaker, and in theory, this war could be easily reignited. The world is watching very closely, hoping the ceasefire holds, long-term peace is restored, and Gaza is rapidly rebuilt. Meanwhile, the Trump administration will keep a close watch on the Middle East while they continue their efforts to stop Russia's war against Ukraine, and all that while ensuring that peace and security are afforded to all of Western Europe. Drop us a note now with your thoughts and comments on day 2 of the big ceasefire in the Middle East, and you'll find us at newsroundupwithbill@gmail.com. Davey, back to you and the email bag. Who do we turn to first?
Okay, Bill. Ivan is checking in with us today from North Platte, Nebraska.
Hello, Ivan. What's on your mind?
He says, I'm not the biggest fan of the president, but this peace deal is a brilliant accomplishment.
Yeah.
He's leading the world and doing something that's never been done before.
Yeah, and as you saw, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu praising President Trump yesterday, giving him the highest honor that Israel can afford to a foreigner, someone who's not part of Israeli. You also may have missed this, but earlier today, Speaker Johnson said he will nominate President Trump for the Nobel Peace Prize in 2026. Turning out to be a great American hero, a great American institution, doing all he can to not only make America great again, but make the whole world great again. Appreciate checking in, Ivan. And Davey, who's up next?
Okay, Bill, here's a bit of a different view from Kurt in Sheboygan, Wisconsin.
Hi, Kurt. I've always heard of Sheboygan, but I didn't know people actually live there. What goes on? David, do you know anything about Sheboygan?
I don't know much about Sheboygan, Bill. Yeah. I think it's on the water up there, but I don't know much more about it.
Okay, well, what's on your mind? Chime on in.
Okay, Kurt says Hamas is too busy executing people in the streets to worry about any peace deal. They're not going down without a fight.
They're not going down without a fight. The fight's been going on for 2 years, but they are severely weakened. And by the way, for those folks who were saying that the Trump administration, a lot of folks were saying this, the Trump administration of the states should stay out of that war. This is proof they were entirely wrong. Without the help, the guidance, and support of President Trump and the administration, Hamas's war right now with Israel, it would be going full bore right now with no end in sight. It's not exactly a done deal right now, but we can see a light at the end of the tunnel. Now, some additional headlines we are keeping a very close watch on here in the News Roundup newsroom. A number of airports across the U.S. are refusing to play a video released by the Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem, which blames Democrats for disrupting air travel by causing the ongoing shutdown of our federal government. Well, that's kind of partisan political messaging. She is correct, but she can't use the airports to push her department's agenda. I'll call foul on that one. Moving along now to the White House and President Trump posthumously awarding our nation's highest civilian honor, the prestigious Presidential Medal of Freedom, to murdered conservative activist Charlie Kirk. At the ceremony, Trump calling Kirk a fearless warrior for liberty and an American patriot of the highest caliber. Yeah, Charlie Kirk, he's gone, but he will never be forgotten. Another great American hero. And turning now to some news impacting a whole lot of computers, Microsoft officially ending support for Windows 10 today, saying that from here on out, they'll no longer be offering feature updates or tech assistance for the widespread operating system. Now, Davey, are you saying they're closing the window on Windows? Is that right?
Well, Bill, they're closing the window on Windows 10.
All right, by the way, if you're one of the more than 40% of Windows users who are still running the old system, you can either upgrade to Windows 11, sold, or if your computer allows you to get some form of extended security updates from Microsoft, that'll kind of tide you over. Or do what I do, and that's simply use Windows 95. Is that okay, Davey, Windows 95?
Bill, I think it went out back in the 90s.
Oh, I kind of went out back in the 90s. Turning now to the world of business with a quick peek at a couple of stories which are currently making waves in finance, trade, and a bunch more. First up, the CEO of the cash-raising platform GoFundMe says that right now our nation's economy is so bad that a growing number of Americans are actually crowdfunding their groceries just so they can make ends meet. I get it. He points to the rising cost of the basic items needed for everyday survival as the reason for the big change. And I wonder if I can do some crowdfunding, Davey, for my gas. Unleaded gas, $5 a gallon and then some right here in L.A. And what are you paying over there in Washington?
Wow, yeah, it's under $3 a gallon over here, Bill.
We should be rounduping together then in Washington. Run along to some auto-related news. General Motors, GM, announcing plans to take a $1.6 billion hit to their books next quarter. This following the Trump administration's recent elimination of EV tax incentives. Meanwhile, China's exports of electric vehicles, check this out, doubled last month from the same period a year earlier as Chinese automakers continue to expand their reach into a whole bunch of overseas markets. And I dig those EVs, but they're kind of pricey for me, and that's why, personally, Davey, I always cruise around town. I can't tell if we found one of those pictures, but I always cruise around on my jet-powered skateboard. I get pretty good mileage, and I get a lot of looks as well. That is the way to scoot around town. And on now to the commodity markets. I don't even know what commodity markets mean. Is this about commodes? Is that what you're getting at, Davey?
No, Bill, it has nothing to do with commodes. Commodities are items that are traded, like soybeans or precious metals, stuff like that.
Oh, very good. On now to commodity markets. Silver prices reaching an all-time high of more than $50 per troy ounce, eclipsing a record which had stood since 1980. The high watermark coming as investors continue to look for shelter in precious metals, and all due to rising economic uncertainty all across the globe. And I have a couple of those Kennedy half dollars. They look something like that and that. Those have got to be worth what? At least a half a buck a piece by now, Davey?
Yeah, it could be worth 50 cents, Bill.
And then some. And now time for a quick glance at the lighter side of news. And here's the lowdown. Here's the skinny. For the first time in nearly a century, a legendary potato chip company, they're giving their packaging a huge makeover, in part to kind of convince people that their tasty product is actually made out of real spuds. Hello? World-famous Lay's, bet you can't eat just one. I remember that ad campaign. Says they're chipping in with RFK Jr.'s aim to make America healthy again. They call that MAHA, by removing all artificial ingredients from their U.S. chips. They're also introducing a much brighter logo and a redesigned bag which features a bunch of snappy photos while boasting that real potatoes are the secret ingredient behind their crispy snacks. Real potatoes, Davey? Secret ingredient? It's potato chips, man. All right, Lay's says the company's new identity is simply a love letter to both the brand's origins as well as the humble farm-grown potato. They also admit that right now, 42% of people who enjoy their chips don't even know they're made out of potatoes in the first place. Well, they're not Pringles, they're Lay's potato chips. Come on. Now, look, do what you want with the packaging. Do what you want, say what you want. You can even charge what you want. But how dare you remove the artificial flavors and colors? What do I always say about artificial flavors and colors, Davey?
Don't remove them.
I always say don't remove them. Here's the real confusing part. And was it really necessary to put made with real potatoes on every bag of potato chips? Seems kind of obvious. It's a potato chip, and common sense would suggest that they're made with real taters. That's like selling a bag of apples and saying on every apple is made with apples. Duh. You know, a bottle of shampoo shouldn't come with directions, and Lay's shouldn't have to point out that their potato chips are made with real spuds. Come on, Lay's. All right, moving now from the perfect snack to the other perfect snack. No, Davey, not celery, Triscuits, or tofu. The other perfect snack, and that'd be ice cream. Every year, a popular ice cream company brings back a whole bunch of delicious, spooky flavors to celebrate the month of October. But in one case, they might be taking things just a smidgen too far. The boutique company is called Salt and Straw, and their annual Halloween-themed flavors include jack-o'-lantern pumpkin bread, double bubble, toil and trouble, and even a mixture called Final Verdict. I kind of like that one. However, they're especially proud of a flavor known as Creepy Crawly Critters, which is made up of matcha green tea ice cream packed with gobs of edible candy-coated bugs, including a bunch of chocolate-covered crickets and toffee brittle mealworms. No! They proudly say the insects taste just like candy when paired with the sweet matcha ice cream while adding a nice crunch to your dessert. Davey, give me a nice big crunch. Just like that. Sort of sounds like you broke your arm. You know, there are tons of things you can do with ice cream, and it is the perfect food. You can prepare a double scoop and a sugar cone, a chocolate malt, a strawberry shake. They all take ice cream. Try a banana split or a hot fudge sundae. Davey, you like hot fudge sundaes?
Who doesn't like hot fudge sundaes?
Who doesn't like hot fudge sundaes? You can throw a few scoops in a bowl, add some fruit and granola. Last I checked, pie a la mode was a chunk of pie with ice cream right on top. Look at that. You can almost taste it. I've even heard rumors floating around town that ice cream makes a slab of chocolate cake taste just a smidgen better. Now, there's only one way to ruin ice cream, and that's by adding chocolate-coated crickets and or toffee brittle mealworms to the mix. No. Thank you, Salt and Straw, but no thanks. And here at the News Roundup, we prefer our ice cream the old-fashioned way. And that means insect-free. Give me some of that Baskin-Robbins. And David, doesn't Baskin-Robbins have like 213 different varieties?
Bill, yes. 31 flavors. That's their motto. That's their logo. 31 flavors.
I was more of a thrifty ice cream kind of guy, which turned into Rite Aid. Rite Aid's out of business, so I guess I'm out of luck. I don't feel so good now. And tell us what you're thinking about bugs in your desserts or potato chips made with real spuds. We're at newsroundupwithbill@gmail.com. Davey, it's all you. Talk to us.
Okay, Bill, talk about food, and you're bound to get some listeners chiming in. Okay, here's Annie in Thousand Oaks, California.
Thousand Oaks, T.O. we call that, on the L.A. Ventura County line. Great to hear from you, Annie. What's on your mind?
Annie says, I don't care what potato chips are made out of. They're delicious.
Yeah. Plain, barbecue, or any other flavor. A potato chip is one of the most perfect foods ever invented. Thank you for checking in, Annie. Who's up next, Davey?
Okay, here's one from Vince in Charlotte, North Carolina.
Hi, Vince.
He says, whatever happened to food freedom? If I want to eat greasy, unhealthy garbage, that's my prerogative. Stay out of my kitchen.
Stay out of my kitchen, stay out of my potato chips. Put the artificial flavors and the colors right back in the bag. That's what makes potato chips potato chips. And if you don't do it right, Lay's, we're all going to switch to Pringles or Bell brand potato chips or somebody else. Davey, one more and then we'll call it a wrap.
Okay, Bill, here's Bob checking in from Houston, Texas.
Bob, always great to hear from you down Texas way. And what are you thinking today?
He says, I could probably stomach a few chocolate crickets, but there's no way I'm chowing down on mealworms, no matter what they cover it with.
No mealworms, no crickets. Ice cream is ice cream. Bugs are bugs, and they don't go together. It's not like peanut butter and chocolate. They go together. Insects and ice cream, not so much. And Davey, your favorite flavor of ice cream?
I don't remember, Bill. I haven't had it in so long. I'd probably say one of these double chocolate mousse tracks or something like that.
That's a good one. In the old days, thrifty ice cream, which turned into Rite Aid, had a thing called double chocolate malted crunch, and that was the best ice cream on the planet. And now it is time for us to call it a wrap on the tantalizing Tuesday edition of the Big News Roundup. And before we go, as we do each and every day here on the program, we share with you a very notable quote. And these intriguing words come to us today from the great Ayn Rand, who said, "The truth is not for all men, but only for those who seek it." Truth is, Rand was a Russian-born American writer and philosopher who's perhaps best known for her books, The Fountainhead and Atlas Shrugged. And Davey, she also wrote the Rand McNally Atlas, right?
No, Bill, this is Ayn Rand. She's a very famous philosopher and writer.
Oh.
She had nothing to do with the Rand McNally Atlas, Bill.
Every now and again, I get it wrong. And now it is time for us to bust out. But before we do, don't forget the News Roundup motto. Ask not what your podcast can do for you. Ask what you can do for your podcast. For example, you simply subscribe to the program so you never miss a single episode. And now it looks like our time, it's officially up. So have an awesome day today. Please stay safe. Let's all continue to watch out for one another, please. And Engineer Jamie, we're going to dim the lights. Let's gently fade to black. And we'll see you right back here tomorrow afternoon. And Davey, that's true, right? Ayn Rand did not have anything to do with Rand McNally?
No, Bill. Ayn Rand had nothing to do with the Atlas. She wrote Atlas Shrugged. She wrote Atlas Shrugged, and she wrote The Fountainhead, Bill, and she came up with the theory of objectivism. She was a very famous philosopher, but she had nothing to do with an atlas. That's a completely different human.